everybody, and welcome to the Fierce, Focused and Feminine podcast. I'm Davindra Ojala, the Lightwork Coach, your host for today. So Fierce, Focused, Feminine is a powerful sisterhood and community of powerful women who really want to share some of their gifts, their wisdom, and their insights with you. Now, at Fierce, Focused, Feminine, we truly believe that every woman deserves to know her true power, worth, and potential, and never have to live in fear of it. So please do check us out. I will put a link down below if you want to come join us for our next meetup, which we have every month. And thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. And I hope you enjoy today's podcast. I have a fabulous guest with us, Linda. So let's just take a moment to thank Linda for joining in our conversation today.
Thank you for inviting me, Davindra. I'm really excited to have the conversation with you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, in fact, Linda has been one of my coaches in the past as well. So I know her power and I'm really excited about what she's going to be sharing openly on today's session. So I'll give you a brief about Linda and then we are going to dive in. So if you haven't already, go get something comfortable on your feet. You may want to go get a cuppa, put your feet up and relax and enjoy this conversation. So Linda is a business mindset magician, and I can definitely vouch for that bit, and EFT tapping coach, supporting soul-inspired business owners to show up fearlessly as who they really are and take their business to the next level so they can make their difference and be well paid for the gifts that come naturally to them. So thank you, Linda, for that introduction. That's fabulous. And it really encompasses and describes what I feel I know about you as well. So we're going to dive straight in with you, Linda, if it's okay, because I know you do lots of deep inner transformative work. So what started you on this journey? What got you motivated or inspired? What was your break open point?
Well, I guess I've always been interested in personal development and connection with source as well, ever since I was a child. But it was when I gave up my career as a multilingual PA to start a family that I seized the opportunity to start training in things that really interested me. So I trained as a reflexologist and I did some Reiki. And I had this fantastic little business that was just bringing in enough money for extras while my kids were little.
Yeah.
And everything seemed to be perfect. But then at a certain point, my husband was made redundant. Because we met fairly late in life, he was already in his mid-50s and it was very difficult for a while. You know, he just couldn't get work. Mm-hmm. So when I overheard his brother saying, well, can't Linda get a job?
Oh, okay.
The little girl in me thought, oh yes, I better do what they're expecting of me, you know, because I want to be a good girl and I want them to keep loving me, and I guess I'll have to do this now. So I took a job in an office just down the road, an admin job, and it didn't actually bring in enough to support us anyway, and it was a really toxic atmosphere, really horrible atmosphere in there. But I carried on, I stuck at it for a couple of years, and then eventually I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I think it was because my body was saying no for me. My soul was finding a way to say, no, you've got to stop this. This is not what you're meant to be doing.
Yes.
You know, and up to that point, I hadn't really recognized that I had any choice in it. I thought I just have to do what everybody else expects me to do.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to be safe.
Absolutely. And I think so many of us do that. So do you feel there was a link with breast cancer in particular to the choice you'd made about taking that role and going against yourself? Do you feel this link to the feminine within us?
Yeah. I think because it was breast cancer, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. I think it was more that I was fighting with myself not to say what I really wanted or needed.
Yeah.
And that set up a lot of inner conflict and being honest, a lot of anger and resentment that I wasn't expressing.
Yes.
You know, because I was living my life to fulfill other people's expectations. And I knew at some level that wasn't right, but I didn't have the courage, I didn't have the inner resources, the confidence to speak up about it.
Yeah.
And it was when I was looking for a way to heal the emotional roots of the cancer that I found tapping.
Yes. Oh,
That's
okay.
really when everything changed for me. You know, I started to really recognize that this is my life and I do have a choice here.
Yes.
And I need to speak up for me and stop letting my body speak for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's been an ongoing pattern, actually. There have been subsequent times where, because we do fall back into old behaviors, don't we, no matter how much we work on it. And there have been times where I've let my body say no again because I couldn't find the inner strength to do it. So, but it was really a kind of a big wake-up call. It was a life-changing moment, and I wouldn't go back and change it for anything, because that's really when I feel I started to live properly.
Yes, wonderful. So what was it that made you understand, that gave you the understanding that actually this is my body saying no to this?
Because I knew, sorry.
Because many people would still stay in that situation and not link the two together. So what made you link it together?
I think I was already very aware of mind-body connections. And at the back of my mind, I was afraid something like this might happen, because I could sense all the blockages, you know, and I could sense that I wasn't being true to who I am.
Yeah.
And really I wasn't in the driving seat of my own life, basically. I was kind of fitting myself around everybody else in the family. I think that's very common for mothers to do that anyway. It's very common in our conditioning to be expected to do that.
It's so ingrained in us.
Yeah, very ingrained.
And that gets passed down to us. And I think
Yeah.
that's what can be quite shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Once we are conscious that there's a program running there, that I'm running this behavior that was passed down to my mum. It's
Yeah.
the lineage of women. Women are expected to be the caretaker, look after everybody else's needs. We're definitely not taught that self-love, self-care comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an act of self-love and empowering others.
Yeah.
Instead, we have so much fear there. So how did you deal with cancer, which is a huge trauma and a huge trauma and awakening in itself, to go from, okay, I have cancer, this is a massive awakening, to the emotions that you would have had to journey through to actually being able to stand up and say, right, no, I'm going to speak up for myself, and this is a no for me, regardless of what others think?
Well, I think I realized it was that life doesn't go on forever. You know, it really makes you aware of your own mortality.
Yes.
And that this is your one wild precious life, as somebody famous says. You know, that what are you going to do with it? It really kind of wakes you up to that. And what I found was that with the shock of the diagnosis, it's as though all the dross falls away, all the things that you thought were important that aren't really important just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
And you can focus on the things that really, really matter, you know, like relationships with people and with yourself and how you want to be in the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So a big shake-up of values by the sounds of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is so typical. We can often assume we know our values until we've had a shake-up.
Yeah.
And it's then we start to really identify our values. So your business, which formed, was that because you identified there's a value here that I haven't been nourishing or nurturing? Or was it more from a perspective of I need to heal and transform?
Well, I think I was focused on my own healing initially. And as I say, that's when I came across tapping, because I knew that if I didn't find a way to heal those emotional roots and find a way to have the courage to speak my truth, that the cancer would just come back again. The conventional treatment would just buy me time. So I started doing that work. And then I didn't go back to the office job. I just said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I started up the healing practice again.
Yeah.
And I was so blown away by tapping. Within a few months, I was qualified as a practitioner. And
Brilliant.
yeah. And then my husband did manage to find some work. So things were kind of back where they were, but I was in a completely different space by then.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I decided to take the practice full time, got some business coaching, that I really recognized how much our stuff comes up when it's time to step out and plant your flag in the ground and say, this is who I am, this is what I help you with, and this
Yes.
is what it costs to work with me, and by the way, it's worth every penny. You
Yeah.
know, that brings up a lot of our own unresolved issues from childhood and self-worth and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and luckily I had that perfect tool there, the tapping, to help me work through that with tapping buddies and so on. And I recognized, having thought that I was the only one struggling with this stuff, I recognized actually probably just about every other person on the planet goes through the same thing when they have to make a claim about themselves. So that's when I started specializing. I was on a bit of a mission then to help other people who've got this big thing, this big purpose they've come for, stop holding themselves back so they can get out there in a bigger way and reach more people and really make an impact with their gifts.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can see it. You've just walked that journey, so you can see it so much more clearly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. So firstly, I want to go into the EFT a bit more and find out how that really impacted you, what that changed, and whether there was a trauma, what traumas you found that will usually arise in those instances. And sometimes we can be a bit afraid of going deeper to find out what's underneath, because we're afraid of opening up Pandora's box and what we're going to find there.
Sure.
So I'd love to know a bit more about that. But before we jump onto that, when you voice the no, this job isn't for me, was there resistance, or did you find everybody was supportive of you?
I think everybody was supportive because they could see that it wasn't going to be sustainable anyway. You know, I absolutely hated that job. I should have left. I should have left way before I did.
Yeah. And isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Because this just really shows how much is mindset.
Yes.
And left unconscious, what we do to ourselves. And you could have continued doing that if you weren't so in the body and present, and the cancer showing itself. It shows that we can still hold tightly onto a belief that's actually not real. And yes, that just shows that actually you had the courage to go for it. And when you did, in actual fact, you got the support and love.
And I came across the perfect tool to help me as well, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine anything more amazing than what happened to me, really. I just feel so grateful that it did happen that way.
Yes.
And then of course I got all those little voices that come up in our heads. Who do you think you are? This will never work for you. Nobody will pay you for that. And I thought tapping was completely mad when I first saw it. You know, so how can that possibly help anybody? But,
so for those that are new to healing, transformation, EFT, what is it?
It's basically a stress relief tool that you can use at a really basic level to manage your stress response in the moment, manage your emotions in the moment. And it's been shown in clinical trials now that when you're tapping and focusing on whatever bothers you, you're sending a message to the amygdala, to the fear center in the brain, you know, that really ancient part of the brain. The primal part, you're sending a message to it to turn down the stress response. And that allows the relaxation response to come up. And when that happens, you're coming out of fight, flight, freeze. The blood comes back here. Whereas when you're triggered, you're not able to access your most resourceful self. So and it's been shown it lowers stress hormones in the blood when you tap, just at a very simple level. So, you know, children use it, old people use it, anybody can use it for anything. But in the hands of a practitioner, you can go really deep and find the roots of some of the ways we unconsciously behave that make us shut down, you know, that drive our energy up and out of the body and stop us being fully embodied and in our power.
Yes. So what do you feel EFT in particular can be most powerful at transforming? Is it quite wide, or do you feel in actual fact anything that's stress related, which is nearly everything?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And there is a saying, try it on everything, that the Gary Craig, the founder, said, try it on everything. And it will help you with any situation that makes you feel tense or stressed, just by simply focusing on that and then tapping and breathing and allowing the feelings to be there. You'll find that your nervous system calms down and your energy comes back to center. You can actually come back into the body, back into your resourceful self.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're driven up and out, you don't make intelligent choices when you're in fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah. And I think that's the really key thing to remember, because I remember when I first came across EFT, I didn't quite get it. I thought it was similar to what some people can think of as meditation, a simple tools for relief.
Right.
And I think what I learned throughout the years, and then I know when I reached out to work with you, it was a real understanding of, no, it's not just stress release or a relief from my stress. This has the power to take me really deep into trauma, into unconscious blocks, but actually going into the root and unplugging the roots. And I don't feel that was really highlighted in some of the things I'd come across with EFT until I'd really done the work with you, and you're taking me so deep that you allowed me to safely drop into that space and stay there.
Yes. And I think that's the key, being able to stay there and allow the feelings to be there without needing to change them or get rid of them. Just allowing and tapping and allowing and breathing. That helps the body to process what actually got stuck in your emotional mind.
Yeah. And why do you feel it's so much more powerful doing that with another person, with a therapist? What allows somebody to go so much deeper than doing this on their own?
Well, I think with the really deep trauma, parts of us just don't want to go there because it doesn't feel safe, so they'll find something else to do to distract us. We'll start thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Or, it will deflect us from actually looking at what we want to work on. But also because we can't really see our own stuff, it's so close. It's just like, well, that's how the world is. That's the truth. And it's like asking a fish, what's the water like today? Doesn't have a clue what water is until you lift it out. So you need somebody else to lift you out of the water and then hold a safe space while you look at what's there.
I love that analogy, because that's really powerful. We can't see our own space.
No, we can't. No. I get regular sessions for my stuff. And it's an exciting journey, because you never know what you're going to find next. There's some really surprising things can come up that you just weren't aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And were there any surprises for you personally during your EFT journey, or with clients?
There've been lots of surprises, lots and lots. And I think one of the most surprising things for me was that it doesn't have to be what you might call a big T trauma to have long lasting effects on somebody throughout their life. And that there are lots and lots of small T traumas, where something relatively minor happens that the adults around us just wouldn't register as a trauma at all. And we don't actually, we just remember it, that time when. But actually it has a really big impact on us as a child, because we're looking at the world through a very small window and making sense of it, giving it a meaning. And it's usually a mistaken meaning that then runs in the subconscious and affects how we're able to show up now.
Yes, absolutely. So what kind of stories do you feel we can stay stuck in when we are not consciously looking within or going deeper? What would be some examples of stories people stay stuck in?
We could have some tapes that run in the head that say, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not as good as they are, they do it better than I do. I'll never be as good as them. That kind of negative thing where we're comparing ourselves to other people, that can really keep us stuck. And
Yeah.
actually, it's like comparing apples and oranges, that there isn't another one like you on the planet. You've never been seen on the planet before and never will be again. So it's quite fruitless to compare yourself to anybody else, you know?
Yeah. So it's quite, I mean, that can be really debilitating. I know I've had
Absolutely.
those thoughts and they can just paralyze me
Yes.
moving forwards. And that's
Yeah.
where I really feel if I don't find a solution to this, if I don't step and lean into this and discover what's going on, then
Yeah.
actually I'm holding myself back. And I've had,
Yeah.
money stories as well, which have really impacted
Yeah.
me. That's, and visibility, again, speaking my truth, etc., etc. They all come up. They're like little monsters rising to
Mm.
the surface. So how?
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, the thing I've discovered about that is that our tendency naturally is to try and push those parts away
Yeah,
and beat ourselves up for having them.
yeah,
But actually, they're all just perfectly innocent parts of us that are running a mistaken meaning and trying to keep us safe, and they just want to feel safe.
yeah.
So the more we push them away and beat ourselves up for having them, the louder they have to scream to
Yeah.
get our attention.
So
And
what do they
the
need?
sorry,
What do they need?
they need kindness and compassion from our older, wiser self, because these are the little child parts that went through some experience, something happened, and they made a decision about what it meant, that it wasn't safe for this to happen again. And now they're like little security cameras in our subconscious mind, and they're always scanning the horizon to make sure that thing never happens again.
Yeah,
And then they flood our bodies with the fear of a child.
yeah.
And suddenly you've got a 5-year-old presenting a talk or
Yes.
running a sales conversation, and you don't feel resourceful, and you're not resourceful in those moments. So
Yeah.
rather than trying to push them away, it's about welcoming them in,
Yes.
welcoming them home,
Yeah.
saying hello,
Yeah.
I see you're scared, what's going on with you, and then just tapping and acknowledging how they feel. And that gives them enormous relief, because finally here's somebody, some older person who's capable,
Yeah.
who's going to take over from me on this now. I don't have to do this anymore.
Yes.
And then we give them permission to go off and play, which is what little girls are meant to do, not be running your business.
Yeah. Now that was a real light bulb moment for me. In fact, that really clicked with that understanding of, yes, because I really relate to the child when
Mm.
it's resisting. And I know there's something going on with the child, but that real light bulb moment, which I can't remember how you said it, but bringing in the wiser
The older, wiser self, yeah.
yes,
Mm.
absolutely. And being able
Mm.
to trust, because I can trust that part, but
Yeah.
it's not until you align those together and
Mm.
allow EFT really allows you to have that. You
Yeah.
still embody that inner child, but the integration is so beautiful. So yeah,
Mm.
that was a real light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I've recently been combining it with chakra work as well, because
Mm,
each, especially the lower 3 or 4 chakras, everyone builds on the one below, doesn't it? So if at the first you're not really feeling safe to be here,
yeah, the base root chakra.
yeah, the root chakra, there are processes you can go through with tapping to really anchor in that sense of safety,
Yes.
and I'm welcome to the world,
Yes.
which the baby doesn't necessarily pick up the moment it's born, but it's very sensitive to everything going on around it, and it will make meaning from that.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then the second one, the shutting down to having any wants or needs, because it's just too painful to have a need if it's not going to be met in childhood. We stop asking, and we push it all away, lock it in the cupboard, and pretend to ourselves, I'm fine, I don't need anything, I can do this all by myself.
Yeah,
Which shuts you down to receiving.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
And
then sorry.
and that I do remember that from our work together, in fact, was the realization that actually there'd been so many unmet needs
Mm,
here.
mm,
And the fun part of it for me was really putting me back into a place of empowerment with understanding. Actually, had I not done this work, I wouldn't have noticed those unmet needs. And although it felt painful
mm,
having to see those unmet needs, it quickly moved into a real, I think there was about 2 years. It just gave me this wave of go. and fun of, this feels empowering. Oh my God, I can meet these needs. I can do it. I just wasn't even aware that they were there. So
well, that's the joy of it. We because we know exactly what that little girl needed and she didn't get at the time for whatever reason. So now we can resource ourselves from within, from the older, wiser self, and that can never be taken away by anybody else. Because it's coming through the heart from source, isn't it? That love and appreciation, compassion. And that energy in the second chakra as well, that's meant to rise up and be the fuel when it comes up to the third, isn't it, for taking inspired action. But it gets shut down by all these things that happen in childhood that we give a meaning to, that really make us kind of step on the hose. And then we start to come from here rather than being fully embodied and coming from that powerful point in the body.
Yes, and I really resonate with that. And I think with many of my clients, I think we've hit a crisis point now where on a mind level, we're very advanced, and in a way we've overrun, and we're just going at 100 miles per hour. We're like children on an ice rink without the blindfolds on.
Good analogy.
There's going to be accidents, there's going to be chaos, you know. I'm surprised we haven't had more than what's showing up right now. And it's if we're all starting to go, okay, we've got to slow down, we've got to take the blindfolds off and actually pay attention here where we're going. And that's really now bringing the heart in. So I think now there's such a need for EFT, because now even the body is saying, you guys, you've got to get out. You need that support. You need the self-love to be able to say to yourself, I can't do this alone. I need help here.
And you need to feel safe actually being here in the body, fully in the body, in order to connect in the heart and be taking inspired action. Otherwise you're doing it from the head, and this is just like a tiny little microprocessor. Whereas the subconscious emotional mind has got huge power because it's binary. Something's either safe or it's not safe. And that's how it floods us so quickly and takes over.
So, can we touch, because I mean I just feel this is EFT is so powerful. I just want to address some of the things that might hold people back, where there might be resistance. Why do you think somebody might not want to do a course of EFT tapping or work with a coach? What do you think would block some different? I mean, we all know we you know, we want to step into our potential, we want to do our best. So why would we not just jump at an opportunity to work with a qualified expert and a coach?
Well, I think there can often be subconscious fears that cause us not even to recognize that it's fear holding us back from doing the work, but it will send all these press releases up into the conscious mind saying, you know, oh, that's a bit woo, isn't it? That's a bit weird. That'll never work for you. You don't really need to do that. Just do these practical steps and you'll be fine. Or the inner critic will come in and start beating you up and saying you're useless anyway, it'll never work for you, why bother?
So how would you address that? Do you have ways in which you've overcome that yourself?
Myself.
In results where you've gone, oh my God, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have experienced that.
I've got an example in a different field. When I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I didn't have a clue about marketing. So I thought it was enough to be good at what you do, you know, and you get your website up and you have your business cards printed and the phone starts ringing, and it didn't. So where are all my clients? But I didn't recognize at that point that I needed to learn about marketing and communicating the value of what I'm offering. So that was a resistance there. I thought I didn't even know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed, that I didn't know that I needed it, if that makes sense. And it was like trying to fly with one wing. You know, I was flying with my expertise, but nobody was getting to hear about it because I didn't know how to do that. So quite often we don't know what we don't know, and there's a lot about ourselves subconsciously that we're just not aware of,
Yeah.
that is governing the way we show up and really restricting our ability to be out there and shine courageously, fearlessly.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So you offer a free quiz.
I have got a free quiz, that takes you through some really simple exercises to bring up the roots of some of the resistance, particularly to money and success.
Right, lovely. So that would give the audience an example, an experience of what EFT could support them with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely, good. Okay, how are we doing for time? It always goes so quickly.
It has gone quickly, isn't it?
I would like to just dive in a couple more questions.
Yeah.
To your personal journey. Was there anything from childhood that you feel you could share that has really shifted an experience or a block from childhood that you feel now you're liberated from?
Yeah, well, I think that there are lots of different, it's always multi-layered, isn't it? There's never one single thing, I don't think, that moves us forward, but there have been lots of light bulb moments. And I've got one particular memory from childhood that I started working with, and that was probably about 6 or 7. And at the time we lived in a little Yorkshire mining village, and my granddad was a miner, and every Sunday the whole family would gather at their house, and it was a tiny little sitting room, and all the aunties and uncles were crammed in there. And every Sunday we children had to go through this ritual, which we all hated. We had to go and stand in the middle. And I have to go first because I'm the eldest. So I'm standing there and my legs are turning to jelly as I feel all those eyes on me. And I can see Grandad's hand hovering over his waistcoat pocket, and he's saying, well, he said, does she deserve it? Has she been a good girl? And I hear my dad sort of drawing his breath in. And there's a pause, which is meant to be a tease, but my heart's going boom, boom, boom. And he says, yeah, well, yes, Grandad, she has. On the whole, she's been a good girl. So then he takes a silver sixpence out of his pocket and he hands it to me, and I scamper off with it, really relieved to be out of the limelight and make way for the next person to come. But that was a trauma for me. I mean, it was meant in a kind way. They were meant to be, they intended to help me be a better person. But actually, it was really scary to be the center of attention like that, and not to really understand what they meant by being a good girl.
Yes.
I didn't really know what the rules were. So there were so many different things, mistaken meanings that I took from that. One was that to be worthy of receiving the money, I have to contain myself in a way that pleases them. Yeah. And I have to meet their expectations, which I'm not always clear what that means. I also decided that that spontaneous, unedited, uninhibited version of me as a child was never going to reach the mark. So, and that my worthiness as a being depended completely on earning it from other people. It wasn't inherent. I had to earn love and approval. And that I'm not free to be unself-consciously me. Not without risking disapproval and having love or money withheld. And the overall meaning I took from that was that I have to conceal who I really am. And I have to pretend to be who I believe they want me to be. And that became my truth. So, and with that comes a constant fear of being found out. I think that's where the roots of imposter syndrome are, when we're always looking out there to see how we're being received. And whether we're meeting other people's expectations of us. And that it's been a big life lesson for me, because that was at the root of not being able to speak up when I didn't want to do that job anymore as well, until my body said no. And so my self-worth and sense of being worthy were kind of really getting tangled up, and worthiness to receive money, firmly attached to other people's expectations. So there's always part of me scanning to see, how am I coming across? How am I being received? And all that brings that anxiety about disappointing people and not delivering the results they were expecting, which of course, when you're offering your services, is a big inhibitor if you don't if you're scared all the time that they might not be happy with what you're giving them.
Yeah.
So it also meant that my capacity to ask to be paid and to receive the rewards were really restricted.
Yeah.
Until I started doing some work and went in and had a word with that little girl and reframed the meanings for her and told her it didn't mean that she has to meet their expectations in order to be worth anything.
Yes.
She can just be who she is, and actually that's what she's meant to be.
Yeah.
And it's the most natural thing in the world that nobody else could be her anyway, because everybody else is already taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you, Linda, so much for sharing that story, because I think we can all resonate and relate to that story.
Mm.
And it just shows the power of just one word. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a traumatic experience.
Mm.
We're receiving so much information from 0 to 7, we're really
Yeah.
theta brainwave state, sponge.
Yes.
And something like that. I mean, even me as an adult hearing that, is my mind was going, oh my God, good, good. I mean, where does that stop?
Yeah.
For a child, oh my God, that can be so destructive, because
Yeah.
there's not an end to trying to be good for something or somebody.
Yeah.
So it's so destructive, and of course that's where we get ourselves into so many issues, because we could never sustain that. We don't know what there's no barrier, there's no limit to good. So oh my God, it just shows how the weeds have grown into
it's very insidious.
affects every other area, and you've been able to just go, right, okay, having this awareness, having this consciousness allows the transformation of all these parts to dissolve.
And of course, once you see a pattern like that, once you recognize it, then your mind will pull up all the relevant files, all the other incidents that have got that same thing going on. So it starts to things start to rearrange themselves. I like to think of it as moving the internal furniture around a bit, so it's in a more comfortable and liberating space than it was before.
Yeah, and it allows us to feel safe, that we can steer. We're not going to be knocking up against things we didn't even know were there. Understand, we can see what's there much more clearly, which just gives us so much safety as well. And we just know we're able to steer so much more. So how does the actual tapping and the tapping points, what are they all about?
Well, they're all acupressure points. It's the same meridian energy system that the acupuncturists are using.
So they're linked to organs?
They are linked to organs, and they're linked to particular emotions, but we don't tend to focus on that necessarily as EFT practitioners. I mean, you can if you're curious about it, but to me that is more kind of curiosity and information. Whereas actually tapping is experiential, and you just notice, you'll find that there might be one particular point that gives you a lot of relief. So that's your favorite point. That's where you go when you're feeling under stress. And somehow it just allows access to that emotional part of the mind, so that and the body's a reflection of what's going on at that level. So the body can start releasing, and the subconscious mind can start processing some of the stuck energy that some of the trauma that got lodged in us when things happened. We didn't know how to make sense of it at the time. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Linda. Now, I know you've been working with many different types of people for many years now. So who do you work with? And firstly, who do you work with, and what do you offer? Do you offer workshops, courses, programs?
I work with people who are on a mission, who want to make a difference with their gifts, and who are ready to take their business to the next level. So they tend to be working with a business coach, but coming up against the blocks again. And I think it's something that happens every time we get to a point of expansion where we need to push out the edges of the comfort zone again. The same stories come up. And there are what I call our go-to stories. This is where I go when I'm under stress, and that little tape switches on that tells me I'm not good enough, and who do I think I am trying to do this, all that stuff. But it's not it's not that the tapping doesn't work, it's just that every time you come around to that point, it's like going up a mountainside and coming to the same viewing spot, but now you're up here, you're not where you were before.
Yes.
And you just expect to keep coming around to that, and every time you come around to it, it has less and less of a grip on you because you recognize it now.
Yeah.
And now you can see it as a sign that I'm on a path to growth.
Absolutely.
So you see it as a positive, you know.
Yeah.
I'm growing here, I'm pushing at the edges, and some parts of me are still not completely on board, and that's okay. I know what to do with them. I'm not going to push them away. I'm going to give them some kindness and compassion, and then tell them to go off and play.
Yes.
And I'll tell them all about it later if they really want to know.
Yeah.
And mostly they're relieved, you know, thank goodness I don't have to try and do that anymore because I'm only 5 years old and I don't feel capable.
Absolutely. And again, another light bulb moment. It's very much that moving from seeing something as a problem,
yes,
to a challenge.
Absolutely, it's a challenge, and it's an opportunity to do some really deep healing as well, which is why I think this journey is a spiritual path, actually, because you cannot keep growing your business unless you grow yourself and your ability to show up and shine more brightly all the time, become more visible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do that work one-to-one with people, mostly with coaches and healers and creatives.
Yeah.
And we work together over 6 months.
Yeah.
Because it is really deep work, and we need to go slowly to begin with. We need to be respectful of the parts that are really traumatized.
Yes.
Even if it's a small t trauma, they still need lots of space before they feel safe enough to allow you to change.
Yes. So if somebody is considering that 6-month program, where would they start?
Well, they could go onto the website. I always have a discovery session with people first before we agree to work together, and that gives us both a chance to get to know each other. But in that session, I will lead them through some really simple exercises to kind of get underneath where they're blocking themselves and why, and what they need to focus on clearing in order to be able to move forward and expand in a way that feels more has more ease and comfort around it. Yes. Confidence. So there's a short application form on the website, which is tapintoyoursuccess.co.uk/apply.
Lovely.
If they just fill in that short form, then they'll get a link to the calendar where they can choose a slot.
Brilliant.
What's going on for them?
Okay, so they have an opportunity to experience the tapping, and I'll put a link below, guys. If you want to reach out to Linda, there'll be a link below to her website and where to go for the discovery call as well.
Thank you.
Great. Lovely. So thank you so much, Linda.
It's my pleasure. It's been fun talking to you, Linda. It always is.
Thank you for the insights. They've been great. So as we complete, I have a couple of questions which you're not allowed to think about at all.
Okay.
With the first thing that comes into your head. Now, if you could ask one person any question and they had to answer truthfully, who would it be and why?
That's a hard one. I think I would ask myself, and I would ask myself, what do you really want? Yeah. Because I haven't been used to asking that my whole life. It's only fairly recently I've started asking it, and I think it's an important question for us all to get clear on.
Oh, so important. I love that. I'm going to sit with that this evening and journal. Okay, second question. Who has been your greatest teacher or influence, and what quote or teaching has inspired you the most by them?
Not necessarily by the same person. The quote that's inspired me the most is "Be yourself, everybody else is already taken," and that's Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde,
yeah. And we're all busy trying to be who we think other people need us to be, or we have been. Who's inspired me the most? There's so many teachers out there, aren't there? I think Nelson Mandela. Yeah. For the way he was able to rise above everything that happened to him without bitterness, and everybody thought it was going to be chaos in South Africa, didn't they? But he managed to lead them through that in a peaceful, harmonious. I know the problems are still there, but it was quite remarkable what he achieved. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that gave me goose pimples. Okay, so last question. If you could remove one problem from today's world, today's society,
what would it be?
I think it would be hunger and poverty, because there is more than enough to go around, and everybody deserves to have their basic needs met.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Lovely. So let's give Linda a huge thank
Mm.
you for
Lovely
showing
to see
up.
you. Sending lots of love to you all.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart and sharing your truth. This has been so rewarding for me as well. And I hope you've enjoyed this, everybody. So, as we said, details, if you would like to connect with Linda, are below, and get tapping.
Yes, tapping.
Absolutely. Are there any words you would like to leave everybody with, Linda?
Go out there and shine as who you really are. The world needs you right now.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There we go. It does. And we have amazing women like Linda who are ready to support us. So, ladies, especially my FFF ladies, do reach out to Linda, because I know you are all raring to go. You are all ambitious, creative, you're thought leaders. So, let yourself be supported and rise. Love you all lot. See you
Bye.
next
Thanks
month.
very
Bye,
much.
bye, ladies.
Bye.